Texas A&M fans have been wanting this moment for so long. To not only be in the hunt near the end of October, but to be leading the hunt when you look at the SEC standings. The past early stumbles after having big expectations heading into the season have left that fan base a little uneasy. It would anybody. But so far this year, outside of the Notre Dame game, they've been the victor, the more confident team, and they've come through in the clutch. I know the schedule hasn't been the toughest, but that doesn't take anything away from it. Now, they're obviously going to be tested this weekend at home versus an LSU team that's hotter than a tanning bed on the sun right now. But the best question I think to ask is, how did they get here? What has helped propel the Aggies to this moment? And to answer that, I want to go back to something that we talked about and I said right before the season. What did you hear about A&M all offseason? The answer? Nothing really. No drama, no beefs with other coaches or multiple arrests. They were too focused on blocking and tackling. Mike Elko and this group aren't about creating noise. They're about tuning it out. This team is just about ball and honing in on what they do well, not how much NIL money they have or where the recruiting class was ranked compared to Bama's, because Elko has a way of getting his guys to understand that if you become obsessed with the process and not the production, we can get over that hump and finally finish. But getting to this point wasn't the ultimate goal. It's about getting past this point, breaking down the barriers and getting the results you want when it matters the most. We're going to continue breaking this game down schematically and fundamentally, and a lot of it does depend on which Connor Wegman shows up for A&M, the one we saw versus Notre Dame in Mississippi State or the one we saw against Missouri. But if anything is for certain, it's that with this Aggie team, they won't let the outside noise cloud their preparation or drama dictate their mood. They're going to be out there each day this week, focusing on what they always do, blocking, tackling, and the little things. Because at the end of the day, the little things lead to big rings. We're bringing David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver, Blaine Crain, who some people say has a lisp.
David, you polled today, too, if you wanted to know.
No,
don't do.
We give him too much power.
Yes,
we give him too much control.
I have little power, but I know how to use the little power.
David, back to the main thing outside of that egregious poll. If you do look at A&M in their first year under Mike Elko, they could do something that they were trying to pay Jimbo Fisher half the money in Texas to do.
Yeah.
And Mike Elko, again, it's not flashy. It's not sexy. Right? It's not going to make all the headlines and tabloids because of what he said or who he's beefing with or this guy got arrested or whatever. They're just doing the little things right, man, and doing it their way. And that, to me, in general is great for a college football team and a football team in general. But for A&M, that seems like more who they are than this, prima donna, dramatic show that we've seen that should have been on, the CW or whatever.
Well, let's just frame it like this. Texas A&M is playing LSU, the top two teams in the SEC, at Kyle Field this weekend. That's a massive matchup. And I think there's some people across the country that are saying, well, Mike Elko's in his first year, so how high can the pressure really be for Texas A&M to win right now? Guys, I'm telling you, Texas A&M, if they win this one, if you beat LSU at home, you're going to then play Auburn, you're going to play New Mexico State and South Carolina, 3 very winnable games before you host Texas, their first year in the SEC, in College Station, with not only a chance to go to the college football playoff, but maybe go to the SEC championship game and win it in Mike Elko's first year. Those implications are massive. And then for LSU on the other side, think about this. You win this game, you go into the sole lead in the SEC before you go into a bye, and you get to host Alabama in Baton Rouge. I can't think of anything better for this weekend.
Well, and it's a driver's seat game, but most importantly, and we're going to get to the LSU side of this, obviously, with Tim Brando, too. I don't want our LSU fans in the audience or in the chat or listening or watching to think that we're just going to make this one-sided. We're not. But when I look at A&M and LSU both, but for A&M, let's run this ground ball out with the schedule that you brought up, because I think it's a great point. This is the ultimate insurance game to me. Because think about this if you're A&M. If you beat LSU with 3 SEC games left? That's what you said, and then a non-conference against a lesser opponent, right?
South Carolina on the road, New Mexico State at home, Auburn on the road, and then you host Texas.
So let's say you win this game, and you're undefeated the rest of the way until you play Texas. You're automatically pretty much in the SEC championship game. Because think about it. Yeah, Tennessee has 1 loss in the SEC. Yeah, because there's no divisions anymore. Yes, Georgia has one loss in the SEC, but they got to play each other. One of them is going to be eliminated, right, with the 2 losses. So even if you lose to Texas, or you maybe lose to South Carolina, or you maybe lose to Auburn and then beat Texas, you're basically automatically guaranteed a spot into the SEC championship game. Now that question becomes, if you're a 10-2 team that makes the SEC championship game, if you lose that at 10-3, do you still make the college football playoff? That's a discussion that we've got to continue to watch play out before we can have an answer to. But Blaine, when you look at this from A&M's schedule standpoint, if you win this one, I mean, I wonder what percentage that puts you at winning the SEC. Because again, Bama's got 2 losses in the league. Texas already has a loss, right, in the league. So to me, when I look around, and Ole Miss already has 2 losses. I mean, it could be a scenario where LSU and A&M may play twice. If A&M wins this game or LSU wins this game, and then they both went out the rest of the way, they're going to see each other again.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, right now at this point, this is both these teams' Super Bowl. Like LSU's, Texas A&M, you can talk about Alabama-Georgia matchup. You can talk about Texas-Georgia matchup. This LSU A&M matchup is going to be a lot different than what people think, too, because it's not going to be your flash to put up a lot of points, in my opinion, type of game. It's going to be who's front 7, one can stop the run game, and who can get to who's quarterback. And we did analysis of it the other day, but what you brought up in your monologue, which I thought was extremely correct, what Mike Elko has done, not only just his first year in such short little time, right? You see what happens when you bring a guy in, one who's built defensively and likes to run the ball. Like, that will win you the big games this year in college football. You're seeing Tennessee do it. You've seen all these great teams do it. But what Mike has done so far at A&M, I don't think he's getting talked about enough, because Jimbo Fisher... Because
it doesn't create headlines other than the win.
Jimbo Fisher, all the money in the world, all these recruits in the world, this high, complex offense, Mike just came in, made everything simple, stupid. We're going to stop the run and run the ball, and we're going to give Connor Wegman the keys to it, but not to enough to where he can burn everything down, and we have comfortability in a backup to bring him in. So, man, I'm just telling you right now, this Texas A&M team has not been talked about at all, and they're leading the SEC.
Which is, I think, the perfect scenario for them, David. That's exactly what they need, because it seems whenever A&M is in the headlines and it's this high-flying production, it reverts back to 8-4 A&M. Mm-hmm. You know, the one that everybody makes fun of. How do you change the narrative? You change the culture. And that's what Mike Elko has done. Which Connor Wegman do you think we're going to see on Saturday? Because we've had a drastic change. Even look at the Mississippi State game compared to the Missouri game, then compared to the Notre Dame game. I think we're going to see the best version of Connor Wegman at home in a big game against the LSU defense that we're going to talk about this later, has helped this team achieve balance.
They're going to need to have the best version of him against this LSU defense. And that's been one of the most impressive things for me about LSU is their defense. And I think you brought up a good point, because I was laying out the scenario on, hey, if you beat LSU at home and you're able to run the table until you play Texas, even if you lose that one and you're 10-2, well, the flip side of that is, well, what if you lose this one and you lose to Texas, and maybe you drop one of those SEC games on the road, which you could, then you're looking at the 8-4 Texas A&M that everyone always talks about. But an interesting scenario when I heard you playing this out, I just wanted to talk about is, what if Georgia wins out, which they could, and their only losses to Alabama.
So Tennessee's out. So right? Tennessee's out.
They beat Texas, and then Texas wins out, right? And their only losses to Georgia, and then Texas A&M wins every other game except losing at Texas, right? And the Notre Dame game is out of conference. So then you have a 3-way tie there where Texas beats Texas A&M, but Georgia lost to Alabama but beat Texas. That could be an interesting scenario.
It could be. If you ask A&M fans this right now, and I want to ask the Texas A&M fans this, because this is a fascinating part of this 12-team playoff to me. If I told a Texas A&M fan, and we want y'all to call in today, 1-855-236-3228. We want y'all to call in every day. The phone lines are going to open at 2:45. But people handling the phone lines back there in the production room. If an A&M fan calls in and has an answer to this, I really want to hear it. Would you rather, as an A&M fan, if I said right now, you are going to finish 10-2 overall, not make the SEC championship game, which Texas A&M has never played in, therefore has never won, but I guarantee you an at-large in the playoff spot, or I would say, you know what, you're going to finish 10-2. All right, we'll leave the SEC championship game up to it, but if you lose the SEC championship game at 10-3, you don't get in the playoff. Which one do you think they would take? Or would they take the risk of being 10-2 in the SEC championship, knowing that if they lost, they wouldn't make the playoff? I wonder which one most Texas A&M fans would take.
I'll say they take the playoff.
I take playoff.
The at-large bid, probably?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the guaranteed at-large for 10-2. If I said, all right, listen, You're going to beat LSU, but you're going to lose to Texas, and then Texas is going to play Georgia in the SEC championship game, but you're going to be 10-2, and that is a guaranteed at-large spot right in the playoff because you beat LSU. You got good wins that can go in there. It's not like the Missouri situation where if they're 10-2 with a loss to Alabama, it may get a little bit iffy because they don't have that great win. That's a scenario we've never encountered before.
I wonder what the 10-2 would be. Are you saying that in that scenario
they lose to Texas
or they lose to LSU?
They lose to Texas. Now I know that may have some bearing on what their decision is because they want to beat Texas. Either way, let's say it's either way. Let's say either you lose to LSU and you beat Texas, or you lose to Texas and you beat LSU. Mm-hmm. Either way, you're 10-2, but you're not in the SEC championship. Therefore, can't lose it to go to 10-3. And that 10-2 automatically gets you in the playoff. I wonder which one they would take. Let's get to the chat.
All right, chat, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you donate, it's on topic, it will get read. We're going to start the day off with Landon Baran. What's up, Landon? Says, I'm excited for this one, fellas. LSU has to stop the run game, and I feel like if they can do that, it'll be a guaranteed win.
Who do you trust more? But Blaine, I'll throw this one to you. Who do you trust more if the run game doesn't work? Garrett Nussmeier or Connor Wegman? Because we've seen this LSU offensive line be really good in pass pro, and the run blocking not be great. We've seen A&M, they ran it great against Missouri, but this LSU defense, they're playing together.
If this game turns into just a throwing competition, you have to like LSU.
Plus the wide receivers.
That's what I'm saying.
And tight end.
With Nuss and the wide receivers. I will say this. From a secondary standpoint, Texas A&M, one of the best in the FCC, probably from a depth standpoint and talent standpoint. So there's a little give and take there, but if it does come down to a throwing match, you got to give the nod to Nuss and Kyron Lacey and the boys, right?
I did have a friend of mine who's a big LSU fan that's really tapped in there. I was texting him this morning. I was like, what is your biggest concern as an LSU fan? And the answer kind of surprised me because it had nothing to do with defense. He was like, Nussmeier's done such a great job protecting the ball lately. It almost feels like he's due to have one of those games where he doesn't. And I can understand that. Yeah. When you have an anticipatory thrower like that, like he does, who does it so well and trusts himself to do it. And Garrett Nussmeier thinks he can make every throw, and why shouldn't he? He's shown the ability to do a lot. But even talking with Moscona before the year, there was some worry about him putting the ball in harm's way, especially when there's pressure. So you just wonder, can he maintain? It's the battle of which quarterback, right? And I know this isn't a news story in college football, but which quarterback's going to show up, be able to make the big plays and take care of the ball? And I'll go back to something I said yesterday that we talked about. I think the quarterback's legs in this game are going to be huge. Because it's going to come down to a few possessions. It's going to come down to 3 to 5 plays. And these drives where you may be stymied on 1st and 2nd down and you're in 3rd and 7 and maybe they're running 2-man and everything's locked up, both these quarterbacks are athletic enough to run for 8 yards and get a first down, and that's going to be massive. Whether that converts to a field goal or you being able to flip the field in field position, it's a win either way. What's up, YouTube? Yeah, we appreciate you being here as usual. Do me a favor, though. Before you go in the kitchen and make a snack or get back on the video games or do whatever you kids do nowadays, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. And stop mimicking me, Blaine. I can see you out of the corner of my eyes.